This is TWiT.
It is Patch Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month. And as I said, I was, and it was we already knew that it was going to be large. Microsoft sends out sort of a, I don't know why, but sort of a get ready email a week before. They don't tell you what you're getting ready for, but just sort of an overview of just like, here comes, don't forget, Tuesday. So we knew a few days ago that this was going to be a biggie. And it is just independent of severity, in terms of quantity, this leaves nobody wanting. 16 individual patch bundles where, we often have 3, this time 16. And in scanning through the CVE list, I counted 33 known vulnerabilities that were encompassed within these 16 bundles. Except then I looked, and the one for IE, of course, there's always one for IE, it alone had 17 privately reported vulnerabilities that it was fixing. So then I'm thinking, okay, maybe I didn't count correctly, but because it seems like that would lead us to more than 33. But, because typically the bundles all handle multiple vulnerabilities rather than just one. But, this one IE bundle had 17. So anyway, so the third one down was MS14-066. And it's like, okay, and I'm reading what it says. This security update resolves a privately reported vulnerability in the Microsoft Secure Channel. SChannel is their acronym for it, or abbreviation, SChannel, security package in Windows. And it's worth noting that SChannel is in all Windows forever. It was an original component of NT. It's where all of the security stuff resides. So all of the SSL, TLS, certificate handling, all of that's in SChannel. I've programmed it many times. For example, all of that certificate stuff, the certificate fingerprinting stuff that I did on GRC's server, that's all SChannel code and so forth. So the point is, it's in both the client and the server. It's in Windows 7 and 8 and okay, there is no 9, but 10, and also in XP, in old XP machines, in server 2003, 2008, 2012, and so forth. So it's everywhere. It is an intrinsic component of Windows. So this security update resolves a privately reported vulnerability in the Microsoft Security Channel, SChannel, security package in Windows. The vulnerability could allow remote code execution if an attacker sends specially crafted packets to a Windows server. So, first of all, it's like, whoa, what? All Windows servers on the net, by definition, have ports exposed. That's how you get to them. So there's no hiding for a Windows server. It's out there. That's what it has to be. Then, and we've talked about vulnerabilities, Microsoft's whole vulnerability architecture through the years. So they have the exploitability index. And sometimes these things are like, well, yeah, if somehow you could stand on your right foot raised up on your big toe during a full moon and spin slowly counterclockwise while chanting, then, and through a ping pong ball through a small hoop 10 yards away, you'd have a chance of exploiting it. Not here. This is the worst exploitability they offer, index 1, which they call more likely to be exploited. Then we've also talked about how they always have sort of these cheesy mitigating factors where, oh, a bad guy would need to lure you to a website and you'd have to have scripting enabled and click on something and then, you know, agree to down blah, 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 blah. Okay, mitigating factors for this. Quote, Microsoft has not identified any mitigating factors for this vulnerability. In other words, there's nothing you can do.
That sounds good. It's bad. There are no mitigating factors. Oh, that's good. No, that's bad.
Yeah. You know, like for example, we'll often talk about how, oh, go into the registry and you can turn, you know, add this setting to disable this obscure thing that you don't actually need and nobody actually uses, but it's on all the time anyway, so you can turn it off and then forget about it and you're fine. No. There's nothing nothing that we know of that you can do to mitigate this. And then they also have workarounds where like, well, you could turn this off and then turn to blah, blah, blah. So again, workarounds. Microsoft has not identified any workarounds for this vulnerability. So what this says is that, I mean, and what I'm a little surprised about is since I saw this morning, I'm seeing Twitter begin to catch up. People are looking through this as I did and going, whoa, hold on, what? Because unfortunately, this doesn't have a fancy name. This isn't Shell Shock or Humpty Dumpty or, you know, anything. No one gave it a cutesy name, but this is like, to understand this is from what this looks like, this is as bad as it gets for a Microsoft, like for a major internet server vulnerability just sitting out here.
I'm kind of surprised
I said,
that they're not making a bigger deal out of this.
Well, they don't want to. Oh, and the other thing that I loved was that they do make a point of saying, oh, and we've added 4 shiny new TLS cipher suites. So it's like, oh, well, thanks, but you've also made every, you know, potentially every Windows server on the internet is like going to be vulnerable as soon as the bad guys figure out what it is, what magic packet you can send to every Windows server on the net today to take it over remotely. So they have an FAQ.
That's
and
terrible. Okay, so I understand that what they're thinking is, well, look, no, this isn't in the wild because this was privately found.
Privately reported, yes.
What we would like to do is get everybody patched as quietly as possible.
Yes,
and
exactly.
then we'll mention it.
Just slip it in and get it in. Unfortunately, maybe nobody will notice.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll go, oh, look, we have 4 new TLS cipher suites. Isn't that nice? Oh, and it's fixing some little problem over here.
Nothing. Don't pay no attention to the little problem over there. Cipher suites.
So under their FAQ, they ask themselves the question, because they really have no choice, what might an attacker use the vulnerability to do? Answer, an attacker who successfully exploited this vulnerability could run arbitrary code on a target server. How could an attacker exploit this vulnerability? An attacker could attempt to exploit this vulnerability by sending specially crafted packets to a Windows server. Oh, but would anyone ever think to do that?
Why would anyone?
Why? Well, no. What systems are primarily at risk from the vulnerability? Then they said server and workstation systems that are running an affected version of SChannel are primarily at risk. Okay, wait a minute. There are no server and workstation systems that are not running an affected version of SChannel at this time.
So, okay, let me just capsulize this. There is a vulnerability that affects all versions of Windows Server. It's IIS, right?
All versions of Windows.
Of Windows.
Yes, both workstations and servers.
So every version out there of Windows,
Yes.
the vulnerability can be triggered by a remote attack sending misconfigured packets.
Correct.
Of course, that means that the system has to be online, but all servers obviously are. Could it be sent over port 80?
No, it is SChannel. It is in the secure suite. So it's got to be, it's some sort of a TLS or SSL deliberate malformed communication.
Could an IIS server that's not running TLS, doesn't have an SSL cert, still be vulnerable?
It's probably not. My guess is that what they have probably, somebody found a buffer overrun in Microsoft's HTTPS, in their SSL TLS protocol. It's that bad.
So just so everybody understands, if I'm running Windows behind a NAT server, if I'm not running Windows bare to the internet, and I'm not running a SSL or a TLS of some kind, I'm not vulnerable.
No. Here's the problem. And where they said, what systems are primarily at risk? And they said server and workstation systems that are running an affected version of SChannel. What may be possible is that any end user who connects to an HTTPS server, in doing that, if that server knew about this and was malicious, it might still bite you.
So a server that is running IIS and
a server running any secure server.
But you can compromise it this way easily, that secure server, and then it could go on to compromise anybody connecting to it via SSL.
Or even worse, once we know once this gets out in the wild, once the hackers know what this is, any web server that end users connect to over a secure channel could reverse attack the end user.
But it would have to be compromised.
Well, no, or malicious.
Yeah. But let's say I'm a big company running Outlook web server, so people can use their Outlook mail on the web.
Yeah. Okay.
If my server gets compromised because I'm running IIS and I am out in the public, that compromise could then input malicious code on there that would affect every single person who logged into the Outlook webmail.
Correct.
One after the other. Boom, boom, boom.
Yes. Or you could also be Jimmy's evil blog.
Right.
Jimmy's secure and evil blog offering TLS connections for people who want to read the blog, and it's actually infecting the workstation of everyone who visits.
So the first thing as a hacker I would do is go after VPNs.
Like servers are clearly the pot of gold.
But they have to be running IIS or Windows. They have to be running on a Windows machine.
Correct.
An Apache-based server, which is still the majority, fortunately.
Yes.
These are not
and Nginx, they're all going to be safe too. So you're fine.
Yeah, we're Nginx, absolutely, and Apache. Yeah.
Yep.
But if you're running, you're not, by the way, because you're running a Windows server.
Right, and so is eBay, and so is Amazon, and not Amazon. eBay is, I think PayPal is. I mean, there are major sites which are on IIS platforms. I don't know what the percentage is now, but maybe
10, 20, 30? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the majority, but it's a significant portion.
Yeah, and everyone knows who they are because the server identifies itself.
If you go anywhere that says ASP or the active server pages, that's it. So they can be compromised. They of course can be compromised to this particular attack, and then they'll pass it along to all other Windows machines. But once you compromise a server, you might as well just put the whole kit and caboodle on there.
Well, yes, and depending upon the site that someone manages to penetrate, we haven't had an exposed server protocol vulnerability. Well, except we Heartbleed was that, but that was like as we know, a low statistical likelihood of compromise.
And there was a mitigation. You could just turn off SSL. I mean SSH, and then you're fine.
Right.
There's no mitigation for this, you're saying. You can't switch off a service.
Right. This is probably in the underlying SChannel library. If core, it's when your secure server accepts a connection over port 443, SSL TLS. There's something that a bad guy can do to like send a huge motherload packet in containing their own code, and that server will execute their code. I mean, it's like the worst thing that can happen.
Are we not
and
doing
it doesn't
a
sound like
disservice
it's
by publicizing this? I mean, shouldn't we just all keep this quiet until Microsoft can patch everything?
Well, the good news is, I mean, I have to tell our listeners that anybody, certainly we have listeners who are running.
You're going to know.
We know. Yes, exactly. Anyone who reads this is like going to have their eyes bug out when they come to the third thing on the list. And we certainly have listeners who are in corporations running IIS servers.
And they should know.
They need to know right now. The moment I disconnect, I'm making a little road trip over to my data center because I haven't been over there for a long time, and it's time to do a little, maintenance. But yeah, I'm not leaving this thing hanging for a minute.
This is 299-2611.
Yeah, it's the MS14-066.
And it's as bad as it gets.
It is as bad as it gets for a remotely exploitable, hanging out there, flapping in the breeze, open port, pot of gold. Because what hackers want is servers. They want servers. And but end users need to pay attention too, because it may very well be that by connecting to a malicious server, you could expose your workstation, and that's not good either.
What is it on a server? Is there a Windows update just like there is on the desktop client?
Exactly the same procedure. Well, I mean, that's my annoyance with Microsoft is these are really all the same thing. Server 2003 is Windows 7.
Yeah.
So Server 2008 is Vista. 2012 is. I got that backwards. But anyway, yes. I mean, the server platform exactly corresponds to a workstation platform. They just configure it differently. They just same foundation, same code, same everything. Yep. So there it is. Vulnerability in SChannel could allow remote code execution.
We have not seen any exploits in the wild as of yet.
Right. When they publish the code, it's not like this is not going to get attention. The bad guys are going to be tearing this thing apart. We can hope that Microsoft did what they could to obfuscate the change they made, like rearranging the code so it's much more difficult to figure out what changed. But they always do that, and we've seen now the pattern. We know that patches are reverse engineered to find out what got changed. So it is certainly no one should rely on the idea that this is not in the wild yet. It's just a matter of days now. And I imagine we'll be talking about this for the next few weeks, that something's going to happen here.
They don't mention XP in this list because they're no longer supporting it.
Right, but I'm sure it's vulnerable.
Well, if Server 2003 is vulnerable, I think that means XP is vulnerable.
Goes all the way back.
Yeah. So
XP, I think 2003, I think it was Windows 2000 and XP. I don't remember how they were paired because there was a Server 2000 I think that was with XP.
Okay.
Because see, the fact that Server 2003 is supported.
Well, it's still updated. It's not XP.
I think that corresponds.
Even if the core of it was XP, it's still supported directly.
Right.
Nevertheless,
I think the 2003 and Vista were paired.
Maybe
I think those were the
okay.
two. And 08 and 7 and then 2012, Server 2012 and Windows 8.
Yeah.
So anyway, we amid this gloom, it is significant that we got 4. I mean, the silver lining is we did get 4 shiny new TLS cipher suites, and they are nice. 2 of them use RSA. for key agreement. 2 of them use Diffie-Hellman, so we know that gives us it's DHE, ephemeral Diffie-Hellman. We've talked about that. That gives us perfect forward secrecy. So we have 2 new of the 4. 2 give us perfect forward secrecy, which is now what everyone wants, and they're GCM. They're Galois counter mode ciphers. Remember, GCM. That's the same cryptographic mode that I ended up choosing for Squirrel. It's a hybrid authenticated encryption, which does both encryption and authentication at the same time, rather than needing to separately encrypt and authenticate. And as we talked about recently, SSL got it backwards, where unfortunately the authentication happens first and then the encryption occurs, which means that and actually it should have been the other way around, because that means you decrypt, then you authenticate, and that exposes SSL to all kinds of vulnerabilities. So anyway, this is 4 new cipher suites, which I'll also be bringing up this afternoon, because they're just beautiful. And very secure, as SHA 256 and 384 for the hashes. So I'm glad to have them. So this is a nice update. Unfortunately, it's fixing a real problem that is going to it's going to force reboots of all these Windows machines after. Oh, and it does require a reboot, by the way. You're not getting away without because this is core code in the kernel.
Yeah. Wow. So
in addition to that,
XP is Server 2003 is XP. 2000 is 2000 Pro. So just to get that straight.
And good. So they did. They are going back and fixing 2003.
They are fixing, but they have been fixing.
Right. And they'll fix XP as long as you say that you use that embedded thing hack.
They're still doing that.
Yeah. So XP, I'm still getting updates on XP because I said, oh yeah, I'm embedded.
And you will want this update. Not that most people run server on a plain XP machine, but maybe they do.
No, but remember, clients are vulnerable too.
Clients are vulnerable too. So if you surf to a compromised machine, then you will be compromised.
Yeah, you have to go to a compromised machine, but nobody wants to do that.
Right.
In addition, we had, this is like almost it's almost an anticlimax. 17 vulnerabilities fixed in IE. XML core services were patched. Microsoft Office had 3 privately reported vulnerabilities fixed. There's also a problem which we don't often see in TCP/IP. If a bad guy somehow got code running on your machine, this is not something that you have to worry about a lot. But they said in TCP/IP IOCTL processing, this security update resolves a publicly reported. So that's a little that raises the bar. That means that everybody knows about it. Vulnerability in TCP/IP that occurs during the input-output control, that's the IOCTL processing. This vulnerability could allow elevation of privilege if an attacker logs onto a system and runs a specially crafted application. And again, it's like, okay, how's that going to happen? That's like not something you need to worry about. An attacker who successfully exploited this vulnerability could run arbitrary code in the context of another process. Well, that's not good. If this process runs with administrator privileges, an attacker could then install programs, view, change, or delete data, or create new accounts with full user rights. So this is one of those things where it's difficult to see how they would gain that foothold. But if they did, then, all hell breaks loose. But still, the requirements for this are such that we're not running around with our pants on fire the way we are for this server this first vulnerability we talked about, MS 14.066. But Windows Audio Service also is being fixed. .NET Framework, SharePoint Foundation, Remote Desktop Protocol. IIS has a restriction feature bypass, Active Directory Federation services. Even the Japanese IME, the input method editor, had a vulnerability fixed. And not to be forgotten is the Windows kernel mode driver has some problem where if a specially crafted TrueType font file was put out on a Windows share and a bad guy got you to enumerate it, he could take you over. So, I mean, this thing is just, it's got something for everybody, but one really, really important update for that everyone needs to handle immediately, like when you stop listening to this.